Oh, what are we doing? Oh, good. We're recording. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the 17th Annual General Meeting for Rural Development Network. Before we get started today, I'm going to invite Sydney up to do a land acknowledgement, and then we will get on to our program.
Yes, it's not working. Yeah, I hit down. Sorry. Right? We tested it out and everything. It's true. It's true. I should be able to just speak from the heart on this. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And we just wanted to start off today's meeting by taking a moment to acknowledge that RDN's physical office is located on Amiskwati-Swiskagon, which is also known as Beaver Hills House or Edmonton. And we are located on the traditional territories of Treaty 6, as well as Métis Nations District 9 and 10. And I'd like to thank our hosts, the Nahiawak Cree, the Dene, the Niitsitapi Blackfoot, the Saulteaux, the Métis, the Nakota Sioux, and the many other traditional lands we stand upon today. We also have staff here who were able to join in person today, who reside across Turtle Island, including Treaty 7 territory in Hanna, Cochrane, and Lethbridge, Alberta. Outside of Alberta, we also have staff who live on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation in Ottawa, the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Chippewas and the Mississaugas of the Credit in Toronto, as well as the traditional territory of the Mohawk or Kanien'kehá:ka Nation in Montreal. Several years ago, our organization made an intentional commitment to reconciliation. As a non-Indigenous organization, I think it's really important to reaffirm my personal and our organization's commitment to reconciliation through our organization's initiatives, as houselessness continues to disproportionately impact Indigenous peoples and nations across Turtle Island as a result of colonization. As a team, we aim to develop culturally appropriate tools and resources in collaboration with Indigenous peoples and in alignment with OCAP principles. We commit to challenge existing and harmful systems, as well as seek new and improved ways to administer the Reaching Home program's federal homelessness funding. Together, our team is committed to practicing humility as we learn and unlearn about the history and the legacy of colonization across Turtle Island. Now, as we continue to build and strengthen relationships with nations across Alberta and Turtle Island, we recognize there is much more work to be done and important roles that our team can play as allies. In closing, I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to our partners and Indigenous advisors over the past year, including Emile Neufeld, Sandy Boucher, Katie Rabbit Young Pine, Mary Stacy, and most recently, Derek Bruno and his team. These advisors have walked alongside our organization and have deeply impacted not only our organization's reconciliation journey, but my personal journey and approach to working with Indigenous communities. Thank you. No.
Are we good?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Sydney. So welcome, everyone. My name is Melissa Fougere. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Rural Development Network, and I have been with the organization for 7 weeks now. So I'm glad to be able to host this event today, be part of this event, because as I got oriented to the organization, I really did see all of the amazing work that's been done over the years, including this past year. Although it's only been a few short weeks, the team has welcomed me with open arms. I feel like I've been here forever, which has been absolutely amazing. The years of passion and commitment for the communities and the people that we serve are evident in everything that they do. For over 20 years, I've had the pleasure of working in nonprofit communities. In the last 17, I was working in response and relief in disasters for the Canadian Red Cross in a leadership role. And I feel like I've come full circle in my career. I started out in the social work field, in addictions, mental health, and then relief. What's really been evident is that all of the work that I've been able to do has been people centered and building community resiliency. And that's exactly what this organization does every day. So we want to welcome you to the AGM this year. And really, we have a big audience that's online with us. And thank you for all of the people. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Thank you. I'm got to get used to this technology. So if this is your first introduction to Rural Development Network, welcome. If you've been a friend of ours for a while, thank you for your ongoing support. To start the afternoon, I'd like to share a little bit about us, and you're going to hear from our team, more importantly, as the day goes on. But Rural Development Network is a not-for-profit that was established in 2008. It's focused on community and social development in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. It's our mission to walk alongside communities and partners through our vast networks, build capacity, and amplify the rural voice. Our vision at Rural Development Network is for rural communities to thrive. And at RDN, we understand the unique needs of challenges and opportunities that rural communities face, as most of our team have lived experience in rural communities, and some of which still continue to live in rural communities today. We have people on our team from coast to coast. So as we work across the country, we know what it's like to be in these communities, the differences in each of the provinces, and we recognize that. And as we engage with community, we hear and allow them to lead. So really what I wanted to talk about was that Rural Development Network really focuses on that community and social development, guided by the framework of the social determinants of health. We don't duplicate the important work of the communities or the government partners, and we're not frontline service providers. We are there to work with communities and support the development of the important initiatives that they do. We create guides, training toolkits, and train the trainer models for sustainability. RDN addresses homelessness supports and integrates newcomers into rural areas. We provide data collection, community engagement, and capacity building for communities. While we do not provide direct healthcare or health access, all of our work addresses the foundational conditions that make for and build healthy communities. So some of our core areas that you will hear about this afternoon really is about supporting development through needs assessments in the pre-development phase, addressing homelessness and houselessness, integrating and retaining newcomers in rural areas, and supporting the employers with tools for onboarding and retention. Also community engagement and social development to build more resilient and economically sound communities. Some of the ways in which we do this is really through data collection and service needs assessments. We do asset mapping, policy development and implementation, and we support with accessing capital funding for housing projects and distributing reaching home funding for the federal government to rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Alberta outside of the 7 cities. We do community engagement and can help develop strategies and action plans for social and community development. You'll be hearing from our great team today, as I said earlier. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge our board members, who some of which are in the room today and others are online. We have Kevin Shufflebotham, who is our outgoing chair, who's the president and CEO of Medicine Hat College. Alice Wainwright Stewart, who's our vice chair. She's the president and CEO of Lakeland College. Brad Donaldson, president and CEO of Lethbridge College, who's our treasurer. Glenn Mitchell, who's president and CEO of Northern Lakes College, who is our now incoming chair. Dr. Ellen Perot, who is on a year's leave of absence, but also has been able to send somebody on her behalf. She is the Dean and Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. Emma, can you help me out with this for a second? I just need to see the the final one there. And that's what I did last time. That's all right. No worries. Go back. Did we miss anyone? Okay. Also, we have Dr. Sandra Fu from Keanu College, and she is the interim president and CEO. We have Dr. Debbie Thompson, thank you, perfect timing. President and CEO from Olds College of Agricultural and Technology, who is our incoming secretary. And Dr. Dina Martin, past secretary, vice president, research at the University of Lethbridge. And without further delay, I would like to invite Kabir Shahani to talk about our sustainable housing initiatives.
Thank you, Melissa. It feels like I'm putting on a medal or something. But yeah, thank you for everything, and thanks for coming, everyone. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Sustainable Housing Initiative today. Over here, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the community, everyone we're working with right now in the last year. So here's a nice map of all of the communities that we worked with over the course of the last year. As you can see, a lot of them are in Western Canada, but we're working actively to work with more communities in Eastern Canada and in the territories. There are a few projects here. We did a bit more work in Eastern Canada in the year before, but they're not on here because the project's completed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what else we do. So we work in capacity building. We help with needs assessments. So a housing need and demand assessment is something usually that communities need to apply for funding. It helps kind of measure the needs and demands of a community, and it helps allow for us to really bridge the gap between what people need and how to address the housing crisis in different areas, specifically in rural and remote areas that don't generally have housing needs and demands done for them. Affordable housing strategies are what we kind of put together with a community consultation, which I'll talk more about later. It's kind of a bridge between community consultations and needs assessments, and it helps us really look at how, what kind of recommendations we can give and how we can use that to influence local policy and then also local decision making, and really have the decision making locally be representative of what the community feels. Community consultations are where we work in a community on a specific project generally, and we really go and speak to people out in the public, and we hear what they have to say. And then when people have questions, we try to be unbiased and we listen to what they have to say. And it's kind of like, if you guys have ever seen like Parks and Rec, it's like not really, but yeah. So we say, so we do that, and then and we provide some other services which I'll go into in more detail further. But I mean, we work with anything capacity building. So if you're a community that really wants to work on something like a housing project, and it might not fit between these things, and it's outside of the box, like we will work with you to kind of move that project forward. Here are a couple of highlights that our team has done. A few things that we did this year. So we did a community consultation for Balsam Care. Balsam Care is an organization in Nova Scotia outside of Halifax. They had an existing facility that they're retrofitting, and they want to do more affordable housing in that facility. So we met with community members. We heard them out. We heard about how things were impacting them, right? And we wrote a what we heard report, presented that to Balsam Care, and then now they'll have some more documents to apply for funding. We are still working with the Boston Bar First Nation out in interior BC. So we're working with them on their reporting for the Housing Accelerator Fund. So the Housing Accelerator Fund is a program that the CMHC put in place, they oversee over the course of 4 years, I believe, from what I remember. And and they got funding for that. We worked with them on that. and it's really to incentivize policy development, either municipally or on reserve on their policy development. So yeah, so we're continuing our work with them on that. And then another one is a housing needs assessment for Medicine Hat. So this is one of those things that we spoke with Medicine Hat at a really in a really short period of time, and they needed a housing needs assessment completed really fast. And we were like, okay, like normally we would take longer to do this, but we can do this quickly. It's just kind of one of the out of the box things that we did. And yeah, it was a really good project, and we finished that up with them. And Medicine Hat is also in rural Alberta. And then we did a community consultation and affordable housing strategy for the Chinook Foundation, which is in southern Alberta. So this is one of the big ones because we were able to really group everything together. Like we were able to have the data from needs assessment, from a community consultation, and really put that together into a strategy. And the strategy can then influence, local municipal planning and things like that for affordable housing. And then as you can see here, here's a conference presentation that I did at the BC Nonprofit Housing Association last year in November, presented on what were capacity building and things like that, and also on the affordable housing course, which I'll talk about later on. And then this is our team in Nova Scotia at the community consultation. So we're all just here, and we did that, and that was a lot of fun to do. So yeah, we're all really happy. So so yeah, now I'll talk a little bit more about our services that we do. And I talked a little bit about it earlier, but there's a little bit more details here. So yeah, I mean, again, housing need and demand assessment, very important to do to access funding in a lot of areas, and a lot of rural communities and remote communities with small populations don't generally have housing need and demand assessments available to them. So that puts them at a bit of a disadvantage in comparison to larger municipalities who already have all that stuff ready to go. Like if a larger municipality like Edmonton wants to apply for something, there's so many resources for them, and it's hard, but they can do it because they have all these things. Whereas a community of 1,000 people, they might not have access to the data, right? So this is a good thing for them, and it kind of shows the need. And you have to demonstrate that there is people talk about the need, but you have to demonstrate on paper that there's a need, so then that's how we demonstrate that on paper. Yeah, and then talked a little bit more about the community consultation already, but really just hearing what community members think. And this is also something that can be done after a project's complete. Usually we do it before a project to get the gist of things, but a lot of people who develop a project, they still want to have the community involved in their project, to build rapport between the people who live in the affordable housing development and then the people in the community. So, they'll do community consultations and just have a really good grasp of what's going on, with in the neighborhood, I would say. And then affordable housing strategy, like I mentioned earlier, we're just bringing the things together. And we're expanding, and we're making recommendations, and this is where it gets really fun because we can really put things together and think about them and have them there. And then yeah, capacity building and other services. I mentioned this again earlier. It's really outside of the box things that can happen. If we used to work a lot on funding applications, we used to work with communities, and we still do on helping with that capacity, helping them do grant writing, things like that, which a lot of rural communities don't have enough staff to do that work. So they need people to do it. So we would do it. But, we just did a building permit application for a project in Yellowknife. So it's, we're able to pivot, and we're able to do whatever in a rural and remote community, needs to be done to move that project forward. So projects. So this is a few of the research projects that we've done, because we also do research. We don't just do services with community members. We do other research projects. So this one is the Enabling Housing Choice Project. So the Enabling Housing Choice Project is funded by the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. And then what it really does is it understands barriers to housing development. So it's a really it was like an iterative process. Like, you know, we had to speak with different communities and really get to know like what was going on in that community and what was preventing developers from coming in and developing, what was preventing different types of housing from being available, right? So we worked with Airdrie, Bow Island, Claresholm, Mayerthorpe, Pincher Creek, and Trochu. So you can see like a wide range of areas. Like Airdrie is like huge, right? It's a big, I think Airdrie might be one of the fastest growing cities in Canada, right? So yeah, it's a huge one. And then you have smaller remote type of communities. So yeah, we worked with them, interviewed people from all different sides of the housing development area. So, you know, we worked with like, we interviewed realtors, we interviewed developers, we interviewed key members in the community, interviewed people in municipal government. So it was an interesting way of looking at everything. And then what really happened was we had these 6 individual reports for each community, and those reports turned into recommendations. So that's really cool to see that work in action. And then we also developed a guide for diversifying housing in communities, in rural communities. So yeah, and then the nice thing about that is we did that guide, and then we just we're happy to announce that we got more funding from the Alberta Real Estate Foundation to do a northern project. So this is going to be a project with 4 northern Alberta communities. So it's going to be very interesting because it's nice to see the work kind of snowball into something else, right? So we'll have more in the next AGM on that one. So here's one that is also pretty interesting, and I'm going to stand here. So if you want to take a picture of the QR code, you can. Excuse me. But this is the affordable housing course. So we successfully launched this course on December 19th, 2024. It's a course that is an asynchronous course. Takes about 6 hours to complete, but we've been pretty like, we give people a year, you know, to do that whole course because we understand that in the housing sector, people face capacity challenges, you know, so people don't have time to really do a lot of these professional development types of things. So this is really good. You can just log in and, you know, take a look at it. It's done through animated videos. It's based on our step-by-step guide to developing affordable housing, 2nd edition, which was released back in 2023 or end of 2022. Yeah, and I mean, it's had pretty good uptake. So up until March of this year, had 45 registrants from 8 provinces and 1 territory. Right now, we're closer to around 80 registrants. And yeah, and I mean, it's like, it's one of those things where people have said like, you know, it gives you really good feedback, or not feedback, but gives you a really good understanding of the housing development process without having to read like a boring PDF, you know? Like, I'm not saying that our guide was boring because I worked on it also, but I think that like this is a little bit more fun to go through. So yeah, so we have the course, and then the cool thing too is that because it's a national course, we have people from different provinces writing in on the discussion board and really being able to connect with each other, right? And like you'll hear about things where someone in Nova Scotia will say, "Oh yeah, this is the way we got our permit to do this," or "This is how we did it." And people in another province will be like, "Oh, I never thought of doing it like that. Maybe I should ask around and try and do that here." And yeah, I mean, it gets people talking, right? Oftentimes, we sometimes silo ourselves in our regions, and this connects people together, right? And then this was also funded by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the CMHC. So so yeah, it was a good project, and it's been we've done a lot of work on it. And then we also received funding from ECHO, the Expert Community on Housing, back in 2024, end of 2023, early 2024, to work on another module for impact investment. So that is also up with the course. And yeah, I mean, people are interested in it. And we also have I guess I should just plug it in, but we have a promotion. We're doing a National Housing Day in November, so you can get it with a bundle and the course for like $200. So pretty good deal. I can come back here now, and also all the information is available on the website as well. So now I'm going to talk about another very interesting project as well, and this project is just really kicking off in the last year. So we received funding from the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation to do a scoping document on housing on reserve and housing off reserve. So we had done the step-by-step guide to developing affordable housing, and there was a lot of appetite for how we can bring this, how we can work with Indigenous communities and really bring this into that space. So, there's a lot of through collaboration and everything, we did this scoping document. The CMHC was very impressed with the scoping document, and they said, if you guys want to apply for funding to actually do a guide, now is the time. So, so we applied for funding, and we ended up getting funding for this First Nations-led guide to developing affordable housing on reserve. We are at the time in March where we're identifying project partners to work with. We did identify, we are working with Sept Consulting, which is a consulting firm that has a lot of experience in this, and we're going to be working with them on this guide, on the development of the guide. The idea is to work with different communities in different provinces, and to really understand the process of developing housing on reserve and how each reserve has a different mechanism for developing housing, and to really have more details and have more resources out there so that people can really have something to look at when they want to move a project forward. So now I'm going to pass it on to Sydney to talk a little bit more about homelessness.
Thank you very much. Right. So it's no secret that our country is facing a really challenging and uncertain time due to the housing and affordability crisis. However, despite these challenges, in the past year, we've seen an increasing number of rural, remote, and Indigenous communities and organizations come together to develop local responses to homelessness and houselessness in their community. This year, our homelessness team has supported over 50 communities with developing responses to homelessness through funding, specifically through our Reaching Home program, which you're going to hear about shortly, through advocacy and through capacity building work, including training, data collection, as well as task force and coalition development. I just want to say I'm really grateful to work with such a dedicated and passionate team here at RDN. I'm really proud of them. I'm really excited for their work to be shared today, and I'm really excited for some really amazing community stories to be shared today as well. So with that being said, I'm going to pass things over first to Bryn to talk more about our Reaching Home program.
My award. Sydney. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bryn, and I'm the program coordinator for Reaching Home. I'll just be taking a couple moments here to share a bit about the Reaching Home program and all of the great work that our projects have been doing over the past year. So for those who aren't familiar, RDN is the Alberta Rural and Remote Community Entity for the federal government's Reaching Home program. Reaching Home is basically a community-based program aimed at preventing and reducing homelessness across Canada. In 2024 to 2025, $2.4 million was invested into 45 projects across rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Alberta. The locations of these projects can be seen on the map on your screen. The funding was divided amongst a variety of operational and capital projects this year. The projects vary from community to community, but some examples of different styles of projects include the development and operation of supportive housing, shelter and MAP programs, ID clinics, and then prevention-based programs. Through continued advocacy, our team was able to acquire additional funding 3 times this fiscal year. The first was in partnership with the Edmonton Designated Community Entity for Reaching Home, Homeward Trust. We partnered with them to distribute $500,000 in unspent emergency winter funding that they had for the month of April 2024. This funding was shared across 22 communities. The next influx of funding came in the fall from the federal government for Reaching Home. Our team received an additional $327,000 in funding in fall 2024, which was divided amongst various current Reaching Home projects. The final pot of funding came directly from the federal government, directly for Jasper, in order to combat the growing need in their community following the devastating fires in the summer of 2024. I'll leave that to Sydney to speak about in a minute though. But in the meantime, I'd like to take a moment to highlight a couple of our great Reaching Home projects. The first project that I would like to spotlight today is Accredited Supports to the Community. They're a prevention-focused project located in Olds, Alberta, but they service individuals across Southern Alberta. They assist clients by making referrals to other services such as child support services, family violence supports, basic needs supports, and they offer budgeting information for clients. They also assist clients by helping them maintain or acquire new housing through assistance with rental and utility arrears, as well as first month's, last month's rent, and damage deposits. Last fiscal year, Accredited Supports was able to assist 98 individuals in securing or maintaining housing. They were also one of the projects who were given additional funding in the final half of last fiscal year. The next project I would like to highlight was also given additional funding in the second half of last fiscal year, and they are Soaring Eagle Support Society, or SES for short. SES offers a transitional housing program as well as outreach supports. They're located in Whitecourt, Alberta, and their transitional housing program is actually the only of its kind in rural Alberta. They're able to house 32 residents at a time. For those who may not be as familiar with the homelessness space, the best way I can describe the work that SES and similar projects do is an excerpt taken from their website. It reads, "Shelter alone is not sufficient. Support programs promoting self-care are critical to address the unique challenges faced by people with multiple hard-to-house traits. Offering support without providing a stable home environment is also inadequate. A safe, stable place to call home is essential for a person to resolve or manage multiple hard-to-house traits." End of quote. For the hard-to-house population, supports such as those offered through SES are truly what is needed to make the difference in these people's lives. Thanks to Reaching Home funding, this and many other great projects are able to make such huge differences in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across Alberta. I'm going to pass things back to Sydney now to share more about Jasper.
Okay, I think we're back. Awesome. So as Brid noted, this past year, we were able to advocate for Jasper to receive an additional $85,000 in Reaching Home funding. And Jasper's been a Reaching Home program now for several years, or project, sorry. And when the fire first started, our team was really wondering, how can we better support the community? What could our role be? So during the early stages, we were able to develop a really strong relationship with their amazing community outreach services team. They kept us really well informed on the challenges the community was facing during both the evacuation and the recovery stage. And thanks to their knowledge and their advocacy on behalf of Jasperites, we were able to really identify what those urgent needs were and relay that information to the federal government. There were many little challenges that you wouldn't necessarily expect, especially as a community going through, a situation like this for the first time, including the outreach team not having access to their municipal bank account or even funding while workers were spread out across Alberta and British Columbia during the evacuation period. So this ultimately led to some creative solutions and problem solving, including our team hand delivering gift cards to outreach workers in Edmonton to distribute so they could support Jasperites, most vulnerable community members, with food security and transportation. And sadly, many of the Jasperites lost everything in the fire. There were over 100 units destroyed. So our team was able to advocate for this additional $85,000 in Reaching Home funding. And I just want to say we're incredibly grateful to our Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada Program Officer, Jackie Wallace. I believe she's tuned in virtually today, as well as her team who really supported with sharing this information with senior officials of government. And that's how we ended up being able to get this additional funding. Now, sorry. Now, as a result of this additional funding, I just wanted to talk about some of the impacts. 40 Jasperites were able to be connected to new housing as a result of this funding, and 119 individuals were provided with prevention supports. And finally, 69 Jasperites were supported with food, transportation, and emergency housing. And I just want to say Jasper is an incredibly resilient community. And our organization will continue to explore ways to not only support Jasper, but other communities who are impacted by natural disasters through our homelessness initiative. Now, in terms of our commitment to reconciliation, over the past year, our team has continued to explore ways to decolonize the way that the Reaching Home funding is administered through the development of culturally appropriate reporting processes that really respect the oral traditions of Indigenous peoples. This past year, we worked with 10 Indigenous-led First Nations and Métis communities and organizations, and we really continue to reflect as a team together on what it means to practice a relational approach and how relationships really guide our work. I was just reminded the other day by our Indigenous advisor, Derek Bruno, that relationships and projects, they should be developed at the pace of trust, which I think is so important. And it was really important for me to be reminded of that in our work. We've worked really closely this past year with Emile, our previous Indigenous liaison, as well as Sandy Boucher, our Indigenous advisor, to build intentional relationships with Indigenous projects to support communities with navigating the challenges with funding requirements, as well as advocating for changes. So as we said goodbye to Emile after several years of working together, we're tremendously grateful to Emile for his support and his teachings that he generously shared with our team and partners. And we'll continue to carry those teachings with us through that work. So with that being said, we always love to say Walal and Emile in his language. Lastly, it was really important for us this past year for our team to really build relationships in community and with community. As Melissa had noted earlier, many of us have grown up in rural communities or maybe have a personal connection to the work that we do. But the pandemic ultimately altered the way that we were engaging with communities for the last couple of years. So through our Reaching Home program, myself and the team, as well as our outgoing CEO, Lisa, who's on the screen here, that's a picture of us, we had the opportunity to visit 8 communities in the past fall, in South and Central Alberta, as well as 3 communities this past winter, including St. Albert, Leduc, and Spruce Grove, which I know we have some representation in the room from. And also we just recently actually came back from a trip visiting Manawanis Native Friendship Center in St. Paul, and Tanya and Gail are here today, so it's great to see you both. And I know I can speak on behalf of the team members who attended these road trips with me, essentially, and say that this has been a highlight of our work this past year, getting to do these community visits. We feel incredibly inspired. After meeting with every organization, we've left these meetings feeling incredibly motivated to continue to do our work and advocate for rural communities. And Melissa and I are actually getting ready for gearing up for a road trip next week where we're going to be visiting 6 more communities and nations. So we're really looking forward to that. And I think we all of us in the room here can acknowledge that rural service providers, they wear many different hats, often too many hats, I would argue. And organizations are increasingly expanding their services beyond their original mandates to support the most vulnerable community members. A couple more examples of Reaching Home projects are Mountain Rose Center, who not only operates a women's shelter, but provides outreach and housing supports to vulnerable community members in Clearwater County and beyond. Also, Strathmore Overnight Shelter, they operate one of the only pet-friendly shelters in rural Alberta, and they extend their services beyond shelter provision to connect folks to longer-term housing supports. Now, unfortunately, there never is enough time to highlight all of the amazing projects and the work that they're doing, but I did just want to take a quick moment and just celebrate the impact that all of the projects are having together. So this past year, through Reaching Home, 439 individuals were placed into more stable housing. In addition, 693 individuals were supported with prevention supports, and 93% of these individuals and families remained housed as a result of these supports being provided. It's become abundantly clear on these trips and community visits that we've done that rural communities are incredibly resilient, resourceful, creative, and are truly the best partners to work with, although we may be a little bit biased. Now, in terms of upcoming opportunities, I just wanted to share that our lovely team member, Mary, is actually going to be leading our Veterans Homelessness Research Project over the next couple of years. So if you're interested in connecting with her on that project, I'm sure she would love to chat with you. And then in early November, the Reaching Home team is gearing up to launch our next call for proposals for 2026 to 2028. So if you're interested in potentially applying for funding, feel free to connect with our team. There will be a couple of information sessions in November. But yeah, definitely subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay up to date on those funding announcements. Now it's my pleasure to pass things over to Emma, who's going to share more about our housing and service needs estimation program, as well as our capacity building work. So I'll pass things over to you, Emma.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was gonna lock you in there. Awesome, thanks so much, Sydney. Yeah, so my name is Emma Wallace. I'm the Program Manager of Community Development and Homelessness Estimations at RDN, and my role is really to support rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in addressing issues of housing insecurity and service needs. And we kind of work on the more social side. So you heard from Kabir already in the Sustainable Housing Initiative. We kind of do the prevention or the pre-work, I would say, right up until pre-development. So we kind of collaborate, I would say, regularly with rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across Canada to enumerate housing insecurity. That's a big part of our work. And the purpose of collecting homelessness data, probably not new to all of you, but just kind of really what we're trying to do is capture a comprehensive picture of what housing insecurity looks like in each of these communities to help inform service providers and then municipal, provincial, and federal governments, as well as kind of like policies, practices, and funding decisions on housing insecurity and service needs in communities. As Kapir kind of noted, evidence is required at this point. We can't just kind of keep having these conversations. We need to provide concrete evidence in order to see change happen. And so we're really able to support communities to collect data on homelessness, on housing insecurity, and develop recommendations and next steps for service providers, as well as all levels of government to address housing insecurity kind of in the future and moving forward. And then I think what, like I always want to highlight here is kind of what I would consider one of our most important kind of impacts or aspects of collecting housing insecurity data, homelessness data, is being able to elevate and incorporate the voices of folks who are actually experiencing housing insecurity in our solutions and our responses to address housing insecurity. Beyond like collecting or supporting communities with homelessness data collection, we also work with communities across the country to build capacity and respond to housing insecurity. And this often looks like building relationships with service providers, municipalities, and community members, delivering trainings in community on housing insecurity, coordinated access, support services, developing community action plans, how we can address things moving forward, and then often also facilitating the growth of local housing and homelessness task force in the community. So over the past year, we have had the opportunity to conduct 5 custom housing and service needs estimations. So we've supported 5 rural Albertan communities in collecting homelessness data to support their efforts in responding to housing insecurity. We also continued our research partnership with the University of Alberta, working on understanding how we can better embed like an intersectionality kind of perspective or lens into our data collection process. We also got to work with over 15 communities to build their capacity to respond to housing insecurity, and really exciting, started planning our 2025 Alberta Provincial Housing and Service Needs Estimation, where we're gathering communities across the province to collect not only community-specific data, but provincial data on housing insecurity. But what I really want to highlight today is the impact that collaborating with our rural, remote, and Indigenous communities actually has on housing insecurity in their area. So as a result of this work, 3 communities have successfully developed housing and homelessness task forces. 5 communities have accessed funding to support their responses to housing insecurity and service needs. 2 communities collected their very first set of homelessness data, which was really exciting. So kind of starting their journey to address housing insecurity moving forward. 1 community was able to improve and expand on their support service offerings. And then more than 15 communities have continued their efforts in responding to housing insecurity, which is just like an awesome kind of thing to see. We have also officially partnered with 22 organizations who are supporting roughly 64 communities across the province to participate in our 2025 Alberta Housing and Service Needs Estimation, with data collection getting started in October. So we're kind of ramping up to that right now. All this to say, when I kind of reflect on the year and on the work that we're doing, I think it's really important to recognize that building capacity to collect homelessness data and support responses to housing insecurity can have a tremendous impact in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. And we're super grateful as a team here at RDN to get the opportunity to continue building these meaningful relationships with communities on their journey to addressing housing insecurity as they kind of go through this process. Looking forward, we will be hosting a 2025 Alberta Provincial Housing and Service Needs Estimation wrap-up event. Incredibly long name, I have to kind of work on that. That'll happen in April of 2026 to celebrate the hard work that all the participating communities and their service providers are taking part in this project. We'll be inviting those communities, the service providers taking part in the project, community members are welcome, as well as municipal, provincial, and federal representatives and our funders as well. And that'll just be to kind of highlight some of the data that we collected over this past year and kind of start looking at what this means in our work and across the province moving forward. So watch out in the RDN newsletter for more details on how to attend that. And with that, I'll pass it over to my teammate, Sohaila. Oh, yeah, can't leave without that.
Thank you. So thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you if I haven't already. My name is Sohaila, and I'm the Program Manager of a Rural Immigration Initiative at RDN. So this past year has been an incredibly successful one for our small but mighty immigration team. Despite the challenges and shifting policies that touch so many rural communities and partner organizations, we found creative ways to pivot, step up, and provide meaningful support to communities all across the province. Along the way, we gained not only a stronger understanding of the trends shaping immigration in Alberta, but also a deeper understanding of the very real challenges that newcomers experience and the sectors who support them continue to face. So we started this year with our Rural Insights Roundtable, and this was our first time kind of navigating and starting a program like this. It was a 2-hour virtual session gathered by industry leaders across Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario to just talk about immigration and the challenging narratives that we've begun to see across the country. The roundtable was incredibly insightful and focused on 5 main topics. So we discussed the current immigration realities and trends, barriers to attracting and retaining newcomers in our communities, effective strategies, policy and funding recommendations, and emerging opportunities. This session was attended by over 15 different organizations, which included settlement providers, municipalities, and employers. So an exciting project that I'm happy to be discussing today is the Ready to Work project. And this is done in partnership with the SIS Community Services Center. They're a settlement agency based out of Edmonton. And this project was funded by Prairie's Economic Development Canada. This project is a training program that supports employers in addressing labor shortages by teaching successful practices for the successful recruitment, hiring, settlement, and retention of newcomer employees. This project also provides newcomers to Canada, and particularly international students, with the opportunity to find meaningful work placements with ready certified employers to gain that relevant Canadian work experience that they need to succeed in their careers. So far, the project has provided over 300 work placements for international students and newcomers, while supporting 115 rural employers across 40 different communities. We also had the opportunity to provide virtual training sessions for employers across Saskatchewan, and that was done in partnership with Prairie's Skies Integration Network. Another project I'm excited to discuss was our intercultural connections and experiences, building reconciliation, engagement, awareness, and knowledge. Icebreak for short, and that was a speaker series funded by the Government of Alberta's Ethnocultural Grant Program.
So this series was a 4-part virtual speaker series that featured diverse Indigenous and newcomer speakers, and the sessions focused on 4 main topics. So the first was the 4 teachings of engagement, facilitated by the incredible Sandy Boucher. We also had What's Next, exploring the 6 for 6 strategy, discussing the 6 strategies for newcomers integrating into rural communities in Alberta, and that was hosted by Aziz Sani of the BIPOC Foundation. We had Behind the Stark Truth, an incredibly engaging session about life in the Northwest Territories, facilitated by Janine Harvey. And we finished it off with Understanding Newcomer Experiences. It was a powerful storytelling session with those with lived experience. We had an immigrant youth named Anya, we had a refugee named Ahmed, and a Ukrainian evacuee named Anna. So that was a very successful opportunity, especially because it was virtual. We were able to connect with more individuals across the country, and that was attended by 65 different individuals, 7 municipalities, totaling, and 15 community members, totaling 90 participants. And with that, I'd like to pass things over to my better half, Aline.
I feel like I'm choked. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Sohaila. My name is Elaine Flores. I work as a project manager and evaluations coordinator for our team. And so our team first worked with Portage College in 2021 to develop the international student strategy. And so since implementing that strategy, or several recommendations from that strategy, the college has seen an increase in international student enrollment in its campuses in Lac La Biche, Cold Lake, and St. Paul in Alberta. And to assess the community's readiness to support their students, or specifically international students, the college engaged again our team in 2024 to lead community engagement efforts. As part of this work, we held in-person sessions in June of 2024. It was attended by local leaders and service providers. We then created a What We Heard report, a copy of which was shared with all the participants to that engagement. And then a fall of 2024 follow-up engagement was planned, where we can present the What We Heard report, but it got delayed due to federal changes to the international student program. So when we had that pause, like from January to April of this year, we did international student interviews with the help of the college's international student ambassadors. The follow-up engagement pushed through virtually in May of this year, where we presented on the key themes from the student interviews that we did. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if I have more at the bottom. I don't think, okay. No more. That should be it. Okay. Okay, so the next project that I'm gonna present on is the Train the Trainer, supporting Ukrainian evacuees across rural Alberta. So this is a project done in partnership with the Action for Healthy Communities. We have Lisa as our project partner, actually. And then this was funded by the government of Alberta's Ukrainian Evacuee Support Program. The goal was to provide important information on resources available and improve the capacity of wide range of organizations and individuals involved in supporting Ukrainian evacuees integration into rural areas. The main deliverable was to provide five-part virtual training series in the fall of last year. So aside from Action for Healthy Communities, RDN also invited subject matter experts from Multicultural Health Brokers Cooperative, Alberta Association of Immigrant Serving Agencies, Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, Edmonton Community Legal Center, and Association of Ukrainian Canadian Immigration Consultants. So that's too many names. Well, that's what we do. We collaborate on different projects. So the speakers presented on topics including the situation in Ukraine, cultural competency and trauma-informed care, supporting Ukrainian children and families in schools, immigration pathways, public legal education, and housing and employment resources for evacuees in rural communities. So this project reached a total of 77 individuals from 62 organizations. And then we got an average rating of 3.6 out of 4 for meeting expectations from the participants. And here were some comments we received, like some stated that they appreciated growing their network of support through those virtual trainings, that it was wonderful opportunity to learn about and become aware of various services available, and that one said they appreciated some of the expert teachings, as well, of course, as the personal stories of those speakers with lived experience. So this next project is, last but not least, project name Creating Systems-Based Approaches to Address Racism. And this is done in partnership again with Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, the Center for Civic Religious Literacy, and Keepers of the Circle, and was funded by the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. This collaborative project aimed to design, develop, and test a new framework focused on creating a sense of belonging and well-being in rural communities. The project team, though, adjusted our scope. So instead of creating like a framework, we created a resource instead of a framework, making it more accessible and useful for community members. So through the project, the team explored racism and discrimination experiences in two communities, namely Strathmore in Alberta and Temiskaming Shores in Ontario. So we worked with the FCSS in Strathmore for this project as well. The places so we also explore the places in the community that discrimination occurred, and then possible opportunities, resources, and approaches that might support rural communities to make steps towards overcoming racism and discrimination. And so these include, so in the resource, it includes like ways to create safe, brave, and accountable spaces, myths and facts, and building really an approach for a rural community, like how to support them to address that racism and discrimination. So I believe I am certain that this resource is available in our website under our resource section, and the resource name is growing culturally inclusive communities. So with that, I now pass things over to Suhaila.
We're almost done. Thank you. Okay. So looking ahead at rural immigration in the next year, so like homelessness, there's a lot of uncertainty that's surrounding immigration across the country, but we're dedicated to continue supporting communities and partners across Canada to be able to support and welcome newcomers into our communities. So I'm really excited to talk about this project that's upcoming. It's funded by the Government of Alberta's Settlement Integration and Language Programs, and it's done in partnership with Action for Healthy Communities and the Yellowhead Regional Library System. So this project is building rural community champions through knowledge sharing to welcome, attract, retain, and motivate newcomers. We call it WARM. And I just want to mention that Elaine creates all of these incredible acronyms for us. And this is a virtual training series that's really aimed at supporting diverse industries and better understanding and meeting the needs of newcomers. So the project will be guided by a newcomer advisory committee and will include sessions based on housing, schools, community organizations and services like libraries, employment, and the immigration system. We'll also be hosting 2 in-person community engagement sessions in Northern and Central Alberta. So please keep your eye out because training will start next year, and we're welcoming individuals, organizations from across the province to join. And to conclude this fabulous AGM, I'm both excited and honored to introduce this year's guest speaker, Lisa de Gara. Lisa Jane de Gara is the manager of small centers at Action for Healthy Communities. Since 2021, she has dedicated her time to supporting immigrants and refugees in communities throughout rural Alberta. Our team has had the privilege of working alongside Lisa for nearly 4 years now. She is an incredibly insightful and passionate leader, and we're truly fortunate to have learned from her guidance, insight, and her unwavering commitment to supporting successful settlement practices across rural communities. On a personal note, I truly look up to Lisa's advocacy efforts, her passion for helping others, and her ability to effectively storytell in a way that makes everybody feel seen and heard. So with that, please give a warm welcome to Lisa.
Okay, right, make sure everybody can hear me. Well, thank you so much, Suhaila. I really appreciate Such lovely words. It's always quite the thing to come into a different organization's meeting and then to be batting cleanup. So like that's always kind of an exciting thing to have the opportunity to do. I wanted to start off by giving my most sincere thanks, number one, to RDN for giving me the opportunity to speak here today, and also to Sohaila and Elaine and to everybody else from RDN. Working in a rural immigration context, we really rely on collaborations for all manner of different things. We are not able to do this work alone, but when it comes to meaningful, engaged, supportive, and really very positive collaboration, we do not have anything that is better than RDN. Anytime that we get asked to do anything with RDN, it's the easiest yes in the world. The email hasn't even hit the inbox before we're saying absolutely, we'd be thrilled, we'd be delighted. It is always such a pleasure to be able to work alongside this organization. To give a little bit of context about myself, the work that my team and I do throughout Alberta, since 2021, I have been the manager of our Small Centres program. Action for Healthy Communities, the main office is based here in Edmonton. We're just north of MacEwan University, so not very far away from here. Small Centres is all of the immigration support that we do outside of Edmonton. So I have the great pleasure of having a team in 4 offices throughout the province. We have an office in Leduc, serving Leduc, Beaumont, Devon, Millet, all the way out to Drayton Valley from time to time. We have an office that is in Camrose, serving Camrose and Camrose County, including Bashaw and Balf and Forestburg and Sedgwick. I think Sedgwick is as far south as we're not. All manner of different communities through Battle River and Camrose County. We have an office in Bonnyville, serving Bonnyville, Cold Lake, Lac La Biche, Wassetna, Glendon, with the pierogi, of course. You always have to pay a visit to the pierogi and take a picture. And very recently, we've had the pleasure of opening up an additional office, which is in Parkland County, serving Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, and rural Parkland County out as far west as Entwistle. Haven't had the chance to go to Entwistle yet, but I've been a lot of places recently. I was in Killam last Tuesday, beautiful community, small, and also dealing with the supports that are required for immigrants and refugees. In communities large and small all throughout Alberta, there have been a real series of changes that have happened in the immigration context in the time that I've been doing this work. In 2021, we had the arrival of Afghan refugees into Canada, 40,000 arriving into Canada, of whom 2,000 are served specifically by Action for Healthy Communities. In 2022, obviously, everything was significantly upended with Russia's expansion of their war into Ukraine. 250,000 Ukrainians came to Canada through the QIT program from 2022 to March of 2025, of whom 65,000 are here in Alberta. And oftentimes when we've had refugee crises or evacuee crises, people have tended to congregate in our country's largest cities, in Vancouver, in Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary. The interesting thing that happened in the Ukrainian case was that we have such large and significant and historic Ukrainian communities in rural Alberta, particularly in the east of the province, St. Paul, Bonnyville, Cold Lake. There are longstanding Ukrainian Catholic and Ukrainian Orthodox churches, people who still speak the language. And so there was a larger than expected slate of arrivals of Ukrainians into those communities. It was, on the one hand, exhilarating to be able to be part of such a momentous project. On the other hand, didn't sleep much for most of 2022. There's a lot of things coming on, telephone calls coming in. Well, we've got 14 people and they've just shown up at Edmonton Airport and they said that they're going to Cold Lake and they wonder if they can take a taxi there. Well, 350 kilometers, I mean, maybe. So this is one of the projects where that emphasis on the assets that exist in rural communities, the experience of rural communities became so key. And it was a real pleasure working with Sohaila and Elaine on our Ukrainian workshop project. The arrival of the Ukrainians was really unlike anything that has happened in the Canadian immigration system before. They're fleeing war, but they're not refugees. They are here on a temporary permit, but in a way, the temporary permits never expire. They're eligible for this program, but not that program. We were having community members coming to us every day and asking for what help and support existed. We were having schools coming to us and saying, I translated all the materials into Ukrainian. The family doesn't understand what's going on. I said, yeah, they came from the East. They probably only speak Russian. Those kinds of conversations happening constantly and intermittently throughout all of the work that we were doing. So having the opportunity to have a platform to be able to speak to communities all across the province, I think was a fantastic thing to be able to do. And we're always looking forward to the opportunity to do more of those projects. Rural immigration is a really fascinating thing. Obviously, it's taken up most of my brain space for essentially the last 5 years. And as is always the case, I think, not just in immigration, but in rural contexts, we're in the midst of some pretty dramatic and seismic change at the moment. Most people who come to rural Alberta as immigrants have come through various temporary pathways. Typically speaking, they have come through employment programs where it's not just that you can come to Canada and work, it's that you can come to Canada and work at this specific Tim Hortons. It's not any Tim Hortons, it's the North Tim Hortons in Cold Lake. So very often we have people whose ability to come to Canada is not just associated with rural communities, but it's very explicitly tied to those communities. And one of the things that we've noticed as those community members have arrived is, what does it require actually for a person to come and to begin working and to settle effectively, not just themselves, but their children? What type of support does a grade 4 classroom in Bonnyville require that went from having every single child speaking English as a first language to now 12 of the 22 have come from Ukraine? What kind of a shift does that require? At the moment, we are beginning to see some of the real changes that are also coming because of changes to federal legislation. A great number of these temporary residents who are here on different kinds of work visas are seeing those visas expire. By the end of December of this year, it's anticipated that about 1 million visas across the country of different kinds will expire. And the expectation of the federal government is that people will return to their countries of origin. And what I can tell you in rural communities is that that's often turning up in form of desperation. People at the library, people at the school registration desk, people at the primary care network or the dentist's office with documents that are 6 months expired and not a real clear sense of what to do next. Ourselves as a settlement agency working in rural communities, we have been making our best efforts to be able to support people as they undergo this transition, as well as supporting the communities themselves. We can't be everywhere all the time, but as you know, I mentioned I was in Killam last week delivering a workshop. Killam is a small community. I think it's about 1,200 people, and it's about 50 kilometers southeast of Camrose. Having that workshop because in that community, they were having challenges to do with temporary foreign workers, permits expiring, employer exploitation, asylum seekers presenting and being ineligible for services. And these are things which are not always part of the national conversation. Demographically speaking, this is a relatively small proportion of the total immigrant population. But in terms of impact, it's huge. It's community changing. It's monumental. And so I think a lot of the work that we have had the pleasure of doing in rural communities, the sort of similar to the mandate of RDN, is really thinking about what assets exist in the communities already across the province. What are the capacities that exist that can welcome people in and have them be integrated into that community and part of that community? And what are the assets that are also very sorely lacking? So Hala very nicely suggested that I should talk a bit about housing, because obviously a big theme of this AGM has been housing. Housing is not my expertise, but what I can tell you is that on Tuesday morning, I got a telephone call that we have 2 refugee families settling in a community near Camrose. So it's 11 people, and they're currently going to be living in the loft and the basement of an abandoned church. So that's a bit of a housing question to have, huh? So these are things that we are continuing to encounter and that we are continuing to look for the kind of innovative, capable, and fascinating solutions that we know can only come up from the grassroots level in the communities that we serve. This is something that we are in the midst of a period of quite dramatic change. My guess, and I don't think it's necessarily a dramatic guess, I think the data bears it out as well as the policy change, is that with all of the changes to temporary residents and temporary workers that have been in the news hugely in the last several weeks, we may be looking at demographically a very different picture of rural immigration in probably 8 months' time than we have now. I can tell you that in the 4.5 years that I've been doing this work, we have had several major demographic shifts in rural immigration, including enormous shifts to the uptake of international students attending 2-year colleges in rural Alberta, or the arrival of the Ukrainians, or now the expiries associated with these visas. What I can say unilaterally is that the ability of rural communities to meet that challenge, to say, here's the context as we see it, here's what we have available, here's what we can do, here's what we'd like to do, has always been very impressive. There is not a sense of sitting back and resting on your laurels and waiting for somebody to come from somewhere and come up with a solution, because goodness knows you'd be waiting forever. There is very much that spirit of here's what's available to us today, and let's see how we're able to make the very best of that situation. I really believe that while we will undergo this period of quite dramatic change, my sincere hope is that all of the systems that have been built by settlement workers and teams like my own, by housing estimation, by community development, libraries, schools, hospitals, churches, communities of all kinds, that will be the thing that allows us to once again navigate through some rather chalky waters and arrive at something that's kind of spectacular. One final thing, I guess, in closing. In May of this year. So I love hearing about the road trips. I spend so much time driving. I am putting a lot of kilometers on the Subaru, let me tell you. I have been to, I think it was something like 14 or 15 of our communities in about the last 6 weeks. So I'm like driving everywhere all the time. Love driving when the highways are good. Isn't it so nice when it's sunny out? But earlier this summer in May, I had the opportunity to be invited to the Vyshyvanka Day celebration in Bonnyville. Vyshyvanka is, you've probably seen it around. It's a Ukrainian blouse. It's like a particular national blouse, and it's become very much a symbol of identity in Ukraine. So Bonnyville was where the event was being hosted. I had the opportunity to travel out where members of my team were working to set up the event. One of my team members is from Ukraine, very generously loaned me a Vyshyvanka. I am not of Ukrainian heritage, but I was able to wear the blouse, so that's, you know, it's helpful to the celebration, to the event. It was amazing to attend this event because we had people who had come from the war in Ukraine. So people who had come from all manner of different communities, people who had come from the now destroyed city of, like region of Zaporizhia, people who had come from the most intense kind of theater of war, who were there participating in dance, who are now living in Bonnyville, St. Paul, Cold Lake, Elk Point, Glendon, Wasetna. We had some people who come in from Calgary and Red Deer, who are also participating in cultural dance alongside people whose heritage has been Ukrainian and maybe whose parents came here to Alberta 150 years ago. It was really fantastic to be able to witness that and to be part of that cultural participation and celebration of how things have changed in the last handful of years, but also how things have sustained and remained and been a powerful part of that community also for generations past. It was a fantastic time. I did not dance. I have 2 left feet, but I had a really good time participating in the celebration. And so ultimately, no matter what kind of like corner that we're turning, no matter what this AGM discussion looks like next year, I'm sure that there will be some returning challenges, some fresh new challenges. Goodness knows, we always have that kind of arrangement. I'm really optimistic about what the last several years have demonstrated about the capacity of rural communities all across this province, and I'm sure across the country as well, but I don't want to speak out of school because I really only work in Alberta, but what that can represent and what that can mean for the future. So thank you very much again for having me. Thank you for the work that you do, and I guess happy AGM. Is that how you close it out? So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Great presentation. And I think what Lisa really highlights for us is the importance of collaboration, partnerships, and the ever-changing needs. We need to be able to adapt and pivot, be agile and flexible, but continue to work together for the solutions. So thank you so much, Lisa. It was great to hear what you were talking about. And just before we wrap up today, see if I can get this right. There we go. We're going to talk about a few things that are coming up. So Kabir did talk about at the beginning today, we do have our National Housing Day virtual conference coming up on November 20th. Right here, you'll see the QR code, but Tricia will also put it in the chat for the people that are online. We have a lot of great speakers lined up. They're going to talk about tiny homes. They're going to talk about land trusts. They're going to talk about what else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about modular builds. So lots of different innovative solutions that we're going to be talking about from some experts from across Canada and the United Kingdom. So don't miss this. This is going to be a great day. And we will also all be there to join in the learnings. Also, I want to talk about some of the additional things. You heard about our major programs, but recently this year we started recognizing that, again, Sydney, I think you alluded to it earlier, people wear many hats. So we're offering shared services. You can refer to it as fractional services. But some of the things that we can support with in the policy development, financial management, community engagement and facilitation, grant writing, administrative support. So we have many different things. And as Kabir alluded to earlier, we are not just one thing. If there is a gap in your program and you need support, reach out to us, have a conversation. We'll put our email information in the chat. You can always email info@ruraldevelopment.ca, and we'll just have a conversation. So as part of the oh, wait, I'm not going to talk about Trisha yet. I'm going to talk about her in a second. So really just how to work with us. And there's many different ways. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can hear about what we're doing, where we're going, how we're doing it, how we want to be inclusive, any projects that we might need partnerships on. You can explore our toolkits and guides. You can answer a call to action. Like we put one out earlier this year for our housing estimation and service needs project that Emma's been working on and talking about. We need communities to talk to us. We want grassroots information. We don't want to just go to research all the time. You can participate in our training online or in person. You can bring us in as a connector. We have a lot of partners across the country. We know a lot of people, and we may just know the person that you need to help solve your problem, even if it's not us. And then really the shared services we just talked about. So as part of the AGM today, we are offering a free 30-minute discussion with Trisha to see and explore the ideas that you may have. We are going to include a calendar link in the chat for people that are online. If you need the calendar link and you're in the room, please talk to us. And Trisha's sitting over here managing our chat. Hi, Trisha. So I really just want to thank everybody. Here's how you can get a hold of us, follow us, learn what we're doing, come and talk to us at any point. And really just want to make sure that we can answer any questions that you have. So if there's any questions in the room, any questions online, we'll take a couple of minutes before we wrap up, because I know that our team is also busy in the background preparing some snacks for those of you that are here. So we could take any questions. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Lauren Dack. I'm the MLA for Edmonton-McClung with the Alberta opposition, and I sold real estate for 30 years before I was elected to the legislature in 2015. So I have an interest in housing. I come from small town Alberta, from Thorhild, in fact, a small village, about 750 people, with a large Ukrainian diaspora still living there. But one of the things that didn't get mentioned, and I'm also the Shadow Minister for Transportation and Economic Corridors. We didn't talk about it, but you talk about services for small communities, rural development. We didn't talk about transportation. I remember hearing the bus come to Thorhild's restaurant every evening, or whenever we're scheduled to be there. And the Greyhound created a stir of excitement. People go to see who was coming and going, and get their parcels and packages. It was a lifeline for those small communities. And I'd like to know what the Rural Development Network's position is on trying to advocate for the reestablishment of regularly scheduled bus service throughout rural Alberta. The current minister seems to think the free market will decide who gets bus service. I tend to think that with billions spent on LRT transportation in urban areas, that we in rural Alberta deserve same kind of treatment. We deserve to have a regularly scheduled bus transportation network to support the viability of our small communities and avoid some of the employment exploitation that takes place, to give students an opportunity to get from their school or college every 3 or 4 weeks back to home to improve their mental health. So lots of reasons for it. What is the position of the RDN on rural transportation, rural bus transportation?
It's a great question, and thanks so much. And I remember the days of the buses delivering the packages. They always came from my grandmother. It was fantastic. And unfortunately, where I grew up, there's no transportation either. We don't specifically work on transportation here, but what I can say is that, and Sydney, maybe I'll get you to come up and add to this if you have anything to add, but a lot of the communities, when we're engaging and what we're hearing is the need for transportation. And when we're having the conversation with government partners, be it federal, provincial, municipal, with community, we're sharing that information and that data that we have. And I think through the data collection that we do, because we hear that all the time, we can report back on that. And so again, it's amplifying that voice. I know, Sydney, I heard you talk just recently about it. Is there anything you wanted to add to that? You could grab it or you can have this one.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Melissa. And yeah, just to answer your question, a few years ago, we did have a team focus on a rural transportation project. I'd be happy to connect with you after and share some of that information with you. But as Melissa said, it's not a space we're currently working in. What we decided with guidance of our board and just the direction that our organization was going, these 3 core initiatives really kept kind of coming up. But with that being said, exactly like Melissa said, and Emma can attest, especially through the housing and service needs estimation work that we do in the data collection, transportation is always coming up as probably one of the biggest barriers that communities are facing in all aspects of the work that we're doing. It's so interconnected. And so I think there certainly is a role for us to play. I think we're just still, we've dabbled in that space, but it is such a difficult space to be in. And we've really wanted to strengthen the initiatives and the expertise that we currently have in those 3 core initiatives. But with that being said, absolutely, we're always looking to share information with various stakeholders and government and advocate on behalf of rural communities, and transportation is such a big part. The other piece too that I'll just quickly add is we have seen on a small scale, some interesting solutions in some rural communities. And so sharing some of that information out with communities as well, I think is really important. And some of our networks provide a space to do that. But yeah, it's thank you for bringing it up, because it certainly, it didn't come up maybe in today's presentation, but it's the one we hear about probably most frequently in terms of needs. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thanks, Sydney. Any questions online, Trisha? Not a question online. Anybody else in the room have any questions for us? Oh, no, you're just waving, being friendly. How's it going? Any questions? Sure, ask away. We are here.
Thanks. As part of my work as a real estate agent, and currently now people can see in municipalities throughout Alberta how their infill development is taking place. And a lot of the houses that are being replaced are either demolished, most are not being repurposed. So there's an opportunity for a business model to be developed, and it is starting in certain municipalities whereby the houses that are sort of cherry picked to be satisfactory for repurposing can be moved to other locations. And I'm thinking in particular of First Nations housing requirements, and perhaps investment in First Nations owned companies to repurpose the materials and or repurpose the houses, like to recycle the materials and repurpose the houses. So there's deconstruction companies that are starting up. There's also some momentum towards repurposing these houses, with many of which are absolutely fantastic pieces of property, which could be moved and immediately put on a foundation, and they're just going to waste. They're going to landfill. So I'm not sure if that's something your RDN has thought about.
You have a lot of There, we'll start again. Just so people online don't see my mouth move and not hear me. So it is a conversation that we are having quite a bit. And what is our space in that? Again, we do the pre-development side of it and not the development side of it. But what types of housing can we work in that repurposing space? Do we have the expertise around the table? Is it an area for us to grow in? Because I think there are different solutions out there that we can start to consider. I know one of the things that our team has talked a lot about is middle housing, and which is those smaller homes, not necessarily infill homes, but like the duplexes, the fourplexes that, you can have multi-generational families living in. Are they part of a co-op? Are they part of a land trust? And so I think for us, and maybe somebody from our planning team really wants to talk about it, and both are avoiding eye contact right now. But it is something that is being considered and that we could possibly present as a solution. Kabir, is there anything you want to add to that?
Perfect. So yeah, you bring up a lot of interesting points. I would say like one of the biggest gaps, right, to doing those kind of projects is the funding. I know that there is like innovation funding federally, like through the CMHC, and we have worked on some programs where we've applied for. Well, we've had a few projects actually in the past that have gone through that route, and we've been able to work with communities specifically on projects like that that are more innovative. In terms of, like you mentioned earlier, like logistics, it can become very difficult for some of the northern communities and the remote communities to really align all of that transport with the construction season and with all of those things that are, that are happening. But yeah, I would say like it comes down to collaboration at all levels of government. So you would need to, and as you know, right, like you would need to have the provincial government and the federal government collaborating. So I think that like, and of course like the municipalities, right, and the Indigenous communities as well. I think that it is a possibility. And I think that there was like, I mean, Jordan and Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was something similar in New Brunswick. There's something like that where they're repurposing housing that I've seen. So it's been done. It's something that can be done. It would greatly improve housing stock in in Canada. So I mean, it's a very good point, and and people should know more about it. So thanks for bringing it up.
I think one of the last things I would add too is the opportunity, because as we look at it, it's still fairly new way to look at things and innovative, is we are in a good position to do the research, to do the community consultation, to hear from the ground, is that a viable solution also for them, instead of just, here's a solution packaged for you and it's going to work, where people say, no, it's not going to work. So I think we are in that unique position where we can do that research. And again, as Kabir said, going back to that funding and working together to get that data to say, let's move this forward. Any other questions?
So it's on. Okay, I just have a comment here online. Melissa, Linda was just saying, I'd like to hear any strategies that can help hard to house community members. So I think Linda will get a member of our team to connect with you on that. But thank you very much for your comment.
And I just noticed we're a touch over time, but I'm happy to take any more questions. If not, I believe light refreshments are available. We can continue the conversation. Really thanking everyone online for their participation today. I know how hard the hybrid environment is, and yes, please do reach out to us if there's any questions, and we'll definitely connect with you as soon as we can, and we will have an appropriate member of the team be able to answer that for you. So thank you all for coming, and another successful year, and looking forward to your participation next year.